What if the city that never sleeps has secrets buried beneath your feet? From hidden tunnels and forgotten stations to the silence within Central Park, today we uncover the stories that built the concrete jungle. Love discovering the unseen side of America? Hit like, subscribe, and join Uncharted America, where every episode digs deeper into what lies beneath the surface.
Unveiling the secrets of the concrete jungle. Imagine a city that never sleeps, yet holds tales of silent corners and monumental creations. Have you ever pondered who engineered the labyrinthine subway beneath New York streets, or how a vast park emerged from swamps and rock? This isn't just about skyscrapers and crowds. It's a journey into the hidden histories and tranquil escapes that define the Big Apple. Today, we'll dive into verified facts that reveal the ingenuity behind the subway, the transformation of Central Park, and the elusive spots of real silence, promising to change how you see this iconic metropolis. It wasn't magic that carved the veins of transport beneath New York City's skin, nor was it a single, clean, government-led initiative that simply appeared one day. The birth of the subway was a messy, loud, and profoundly human endeavor, born from a city gasping for air. By the turn of the 20th century, Manhattan was suffocating. Its streets were a gridlocked nightmare of horse-drawn carriages, clanging trolleys, and pedestrians dodging mountains of manure. The noise was a physical force. The city's arteries were clogged, and its northward expansion was stymied by the simple inability to move people efficiently. Elevated trains, or Ls, had been running for decades, but they were noisy, blocked the sunlight, and rained hot ash on the streets below. The solution had to be subterranean. It fell to the newly formed Interborough Rapid Transit Company, or IRT, a private entity that won the city contract. What followed was not a quiet feat of engineering, but a brutal, open-air surgery on the city itself. Imagine a construction crew arriving on your street today. And now imagine they aren't just repaving it, they're digging a trench 40 feet deep and 50 feet wide, right down the middle of the road for miles. This was the primary method: cut and cover. Entire avenues were excavated, exposing a chaotic underworld of pipes, wires, and sewers that had to be rerouted. Wooden planks were laid over the chasm so life could, in some stumbling fashion, continue above. The noise of steam shovels, dynamite blasts, and the shouts of foremen became the city's new, unrelenting soundtrack. Deeper underground, an army of laborers toiled. Among them were the legendary sand hogs, men who specialized in tunneling through the earth. Many were Irish and Italian immigrants working in perilous conditions for meager pay. They fought against collapsing earth, underground springs, and pockets of gas, armed with little more than shovels, pickaxes, and sheer grit. Their work was the unseen foundation upon which the modern city would be built. Finally, on October 27, 1904, the moment arrived. Mayor George B. McClellan Jr. took the controls of the first train, intending to run it for just a short ceremonial distance. But he was reportedly so thrilled by the speed and smoothness that he stayed at the helm all the way to Harlem. That day, for the price of a single 5-cent nickel, over 100,000 New Yorkers descended into the brightly lit stations and were whisked along the 9.1-mile route. It was a revelation. A journey that took hours on the surface now took minutes. The city had found its new circulatory system.
The Ghost Station, a cathedral to transit. While most of the original stations were built for pure function,
The system's southern terminus, City Hall, was designed to be its crown jewel. It was not just a station, it was a statement. Picture stepping off a train car, not into a cramped, tiled box, but into a space of unexpected grandeur. Graceful, vaulted ceilings covered in intricate cream and green Guastavino tiles swept overhead. The same kind of architectural flourish seen in grand cathedrals and public libraries. Sunlight streamed down through thick, purple glass skylights embedded in the sidewalk of City Hall Park above, dappling the platform in colored light. Ornate brass chandeliers provided a warm glow. The platform itself was sharply curved, following the loop of the track needed to turn trains around. For the citizens of a city accustomed to grime and industry, it must have felt like stepping into a subterranean palace. It was a monument to civic pride, a promise that this new technology could be both powerful and beautiful. But progress is often unsentimental. As the subway system expanded, trains became longer. The new cars had doors in the middle, not just at the ends. On the City Hall's tight curve, this created a dangerous gap between the train and the platform. It was a safety nightmare. Furthermore, ridership at this particular station was low, with the nearby Brooklyn Bridge station being far more popular. On December 31st, 1945, the last passenger disembarked and the beautiful station was officially closed to the public. It wasn't demolished or left to decay. Its function simply changed. It became what it physically always was, a turning loop. Today, it remains a ghost, a perfectly preserved time capsule hidden in plain sight. Passengers on the downtown 6 train who stay on board after the final Brooklyn Bridge City Hall announcement are treated to a unique spectacle. The train rumbles past the active platform, plunges into darkness, and then, as it slowly navigates the loop, the forgotten station glides by the windows. The chandeliers are still there, the tilework still gleams, a silent, elegant relic of a bygone era. It's a 2-minute trip back in time, a secret handshake with New York's past. It's a strange thought, isn't it, that the most beautiful part of a system designed to move millions was ultimately deemed too impractical to use. Perhaps somewhere in that station, the ghost of a finely dressed woman from 1904 is still waiting for her train, utterly bewildered by the glowing rectangles held by the faces peering out from the passing metal tube, wondering why on earth they are all so fascinated by videos of cats playing the piano. But the muscle and sweat of the Sandhogs were guided by a singular vision, that of a man named William Barclay Parsons. As the chief engineer of the Rapid Transit Commission, Parsons was the brain and its unyielding spine. He was a man who didn't think in small terms. Before a single shovel broke ground, he had walked the entire proposed route, not on the surface, but underground. He personally descended into sewers, explored forgotten vaults, and took thousands of geological soundings, boring deep into the island's bedrock to map the subterranean world his men would have to conquer. He knew every geological quirk of Manhattan, from the hard granite of Midtown to the soft, sandy soil downtown. His meticulous planning was the only thing that stood between a functioning subway and a citywide catastrophe. The money, the fuel for this colossal undertaking, came from a titan of the Gilded Age, Auguste Belmont Jr., a financier, horse breeder, and society figure. Belmont saw the subway not just as a public utility, but as a grand investment and a monument to his own legacy. He secured the financing and ran the IRT with an iron fist. He was so personally invested that he commissioned his own private subway car, the Mineola.
It was a masterpiece of luxury on wheels, outfitted with a kitchen, a lavatory, plush seating, and a steward. While thousands of immigrants were risking their lives in the dark for $1.50 a day, Belmont could tour his growing empire in opulent comfort, a stark illustration of the era's vast social chasms.
The dangers the workers faced were more insidious than simple rock falls. For the sections that had to be tunneled under the Harlem and East Rivers, the men worked in pressurized underwater chambers called caissons. Entering and exiting these high-pressure environments was a deadly science they were only just beginning to understand. If a worker came back to normal atmospheric pressure too quickly, nitrogen bubbles would form in their bloodstream, a condition known as caisson disease, or the bends. The agony was excruciating. Men would be seized by violent cramps, their joints feeling as if they were being twisted apart. Paralysis, brain damage, and death were common. The Sandhogs, with their characteristic gallows humor, called the affliction the Gremlins. It was a constant, invisible terror that haunted every shift. This battle against the earth was mirrored by a battle in the city's boardrooms and political halls. The decision to build the subway was the culmination of decades of fierce debate. The central conflict was a classic American dilemma: public good versus private profit. Should the city build and operate its own transit system, or should it hand the lucrative franchise to a private corporation? Tammany Hall, the city's notoriously corrupt political machine, saw a project of this scale as a bottomless well of patronage and kickbacks. For years, political gridlock, fueled by competing interests and rampant graft, kept the subway a theoretical dream. It was only when a consensus was reached on a hybrid model — the city would own the tunnels, but a private company, Belmont's IRT, would build and operate the system — that the project could finally move forward. Even then, every step was a negotiation, every contract a potential flashpoint for a political skirmish. The public's anticipation for the subway was mixed with a palpable sense of dread. In an era lit by gaslight, the idea of voluntarily traveling deep underground was profoundly unnatural for many. Newspapers ran sensationalist articles speculating on the horrors that awaited. Would the tunnels collapse and entomb thousands? Would the air deprived of sunlight and fresh breezes breed exotic diseases? Would the third rail, carrying 600 volts of direct current, electrocute passengers by the score? The IRT had to launch a massive public relations campaign to assuage these fears, publishing pamphlets that explained the system's safety features and the advanced ventilation systems designed to circulate the air. They stressed the bright, clean electric lighting of the stations, contrasting it with the dark, smoky hellscape of London's underground, which still ran on steam. The beauty of the City Hall station was, in fact, not an anomaly. It was the most ornate expression of a design philosophy that extended to the entire original system. The architects, Hines and Lafarge, believed that public work should be ennobling. They envisioned the subway not as mere utility, but as a series of civic spaces. While other stations lacked the grand arches of City Hall, they each received their own unique identity through intricate ceramic work. The designers created a system of symbols and color palettes so that even illiterate passengers could navigate with ease. At the Astor Place station, terracotta beavers had adorned the walls, a nod to the fortune John Jacob Astor had built on the fur trade. At Columbus Circle, you would find mosaics of Christopher Columbus's flagship, the Santa Maria. Bleecker Street had blue and green faience, while the 23rd Street station featured panels decorated with the numbers 23 surrounded by wreaths. Each station was given a unique decorative plaque, a small, beautiful detail in a system built for speed. It was a remarkably thoughtful approach, an attempt to infuse a bit of art and identity into the daily commute of the common man.
This initial line, the spine of the IRT, was such a wild success that it immediately sparked a transit arms race. Two rival companies, the Brooklyn Rapid Transit Company, later the BMT, and the city-operated independent subway system, IND, soon entered the fray. For the next 3 decades, these three entities competed fiercely, often building redundant lines that ran parallel to each other, sometimes only a block apart. This is why today's subway map seems so complex, with different lines sharing the same tracks for a while before veering off in separate directions. They were originally separate, competing organisms. This competition also explains the existence of more forgotten spaces within the system. As the companies were consolidated into a single municipal entity in 1940, certain stations and connecting tracks became obsolete. The Worth Street station, just north of City Hall, was closed for the same reason. Its platform was too short. The 91st Street station was shuttered because the nearby 96th Street station was being massively expanded into an express stop, making its smaller neighbor redundant. The New York subway is not a single cleanly designed system. It is a sprawling, chaotic, and fascinating fossil record of corporate warfare, a labyrinth built by rivals who were eventually forced to become one. The silent platforms of City Hall, Worth Street, and 91st Street are the quiet monuments to that forgotten conflict, echoes of a time when the race to move New Yorkers was a battle for the soul of the city itself. The sensory shock for a first-time rider in 1904 must have been profound. To descend the stairs was to leave one world and enter another. The street-level reality was a chaotic assault of smells. The pungent ammonia of horse manure, coal smoke hanging heavy in the air, the scent of roasting chestnuts from a street vendor. The sounds were a cacophony of iron-shod hooves on cobblestone, the metallic clang of surface trolleys, and the shouts of vendors and teamsters. It was a world lit by the flickering yellow glow of gas lamps. To step onto the subway platform was to be transported into the future. The air, circulated by massive fans, was cleaner, carrying only a faint, sterile scent of ozone and electricity. The noise of the city was instantly muffled, replaced by the low, expectant hum of the third rail and the echoing footsteps on the tiled floor. And the light. The stations were bathed in the brilliant, steady white glare of incandescent bulbs, a marvel of the age that made the platforms seem safer and more modern than the streets above. The train's arrival was not a clatter, but a smooth, powerful whoosh. Inside, the ride was impossibly fast, a lateral acceleration that New Yorkers had only ever experienced on mainline railroads outside the city. It was a clean, efficient, and almost magical form of travel that compressed the sprawling geography of Manhattan into a series of manageable intervals. This magic was conjured from a single colossal source, the IRT powerhouse. Standing on the banks of the Hudson River at 59th Street, it was, upon its completion, the largest electrical power station on the planet. It was a true cathedral of industry, a cavernous brick temple whose purpose was to generate the lifeblood for the entire subway system. Inside, 9 gargantuan reciprocating steam engines, each the size of a 3-story house and weighing over 500 tons, turned massive electrical generators. The noise within its walls was said to be a physical presence, a deafening rhythmic roar that shook the very foundations. Coal barges would dock alongside, feeding the powerhouse's insatiable appetite, while enormous intake pipes drew millions of gallons of river water to cool the condensers. This single building was the subway's thrumming heart, a monument to the raw, brute force of the steam age that was given birth to the electrical one. It was a declaration that New York now ran not on muscle or horsepower, but on precisely controlled, centrally generated, invisible energy. The powerhouse was as much a part of the subway as the tunnels themselves, the unseen engine driving the city's new metabolism. The subway did more than just move people. It fundamentally rewrote the city's map and social DNA. Before 1904, the Bronx was a sparsely populated borough of farms, country estates, and small villages. Manhattan's population was crammed into the dense tenement districts of the Lower East Side. The subway acted like a pressure valve and a developer's wand. Suddenly, the vast open lands of the Bronx were a short 5-cent ride from the jobs in Midtown and Lower Manhattan. A tidal wave of development was unleashed. Speculators bought up farmland along the new IRT line, and in a matter of years, the landscape was transformed. The Grand Concourse, envisioned as a Parisian-style boulevard, was lined with magnificent Art Deco apartment buildings. A new urban middle class and working class
could now afford homes with more space and light, creating a new way of life, the commuter. This explosive growth was codified by the Dual Contracts of 1913, a monumental agreement between the city, the IRT, and the BMT. This plan effectively doubled the size of the subway system, extending lines deep into Brooklyn, Queens, and the Bronx, and solidifying the 5-cent fare for decades to come. It was the single most influential public works project in the city's history, dictating the settlement patterns that persist to this day. The subway was not just a Manhattan convenience. It was the loom upon which the fabric of the five-borough city was woven.
Yet, the idea of burrowing beneath the city was not born with the IRT. Decades earlier, a far more whimsical vision had briefly taken shape. In 1870, Alfred Ely Beach, the editor of Scientific American, demonstrated a fantastical, almost steampunk precursor to the subway. Secretly, using a massive drill of his own design, he excavated a 312-foot tunnel under Broadway near City Hall. His invention was a single, ornate, cylindrical car that was pushed and pulled through the tunnel by a giant fan, like a pellet in a pneumatic tube. For a fare of 25 cents, curious New Yorkers could ride in its plush interior, marveling at the quiet, air-powered propulsion. Beach's Folly, as it was sometimes called, was a technological marvel and a popular attraction. But it was doomed by political opposition from the corrupt Tweed Ring, which favored the more lucrative elevated train contracts. After a few years, the project was abandoned and the tunnel was sealed. Its entrance was lost to time, rediscovered by workers only in 1912 during the excavation for the BMT line. Beecher's pneumatic tube was a romantic dead-end branch on the evolutionary tree of transit, a whisper of what might have been. This layering of history is everywhere in the system, often hiding in plain sight. The complex web of tracks is a physical manifestation of its competitive origins, with certain tunnels and connections designed not for operational efficiency, but to block a rival company from gaining a strategic advantage. This legacy lives on in odd operational quirks and seemingly illogical track layouts, and the system still requires hidden infrastructure to function. Passers-by on Jorleben Street in Brooklyn Heights might notice a handsome brownstone townhouse at number 58. It has blacked-out windows and a stately facade that blends perfectly with its historic neighbors. But no one lives there. It is a fake, a hollow shell built by the IRT in 1907. Behind its brick face lies a massive ventilation plant for the Jorleben Street Tunnel, which carries the 4 and 5 trains under the East River, as well as a critical emergency exit. It is one of the subway's great illusions, a piece of urban camouflage that allows the massive industrial needs of the underground to coexist quietly with the domestic tranquility of the world above. The subway, then, is more than a network of tunnels. It is a living museum, a political battleground, and a city-shaping force, with its secrets buried just as deeply as its tracks. The human cost of this subterranean conquest was staggering and is often lost in the engineering marvels. For the sandhogs and laborers, the work was a daily gamble with death. Beyond the bends, the constant threat of dynamite mishaps was ever present. Blasting schedules were tight, and the technology was crude. A misplaced charge or a delayed fuse could bring tons of rock crashing down, entombing workers instantly. The noise was so constant and concussive that many men suffered permanent hearing loss. The air, thick with silica dust from pulverized rock, settled in their lungs, leading to silicosis, a debilitating and fatal disease then known simply as miners' consumption. There were no robust safety regulations or workers' compensation schemes to protect them. When a man was killed or maimed, he was simply replaced. His family might receive a meager payout from the collection taken up by his fellow workers, but the project ground relentlessly onward. These forgotten men, whose names are not cast in bronze on any plaque, paid for the city's progress with their bodies and their lives. The cultural impact of the subway's arrival rippled through the city's social fabric in unexpected ways. For the first time, it created a truly democratic public space where New Yorkers from every conceivable class and background were pressed together. A Wall Street banker in a tailored suit might find himself standing next to a garment worker from the Lower East Side, a society matron next to a newly arrived immigrant. This forced intimacy was both novel and, for some, unsettling. It broke down, however briefly, the rigid social stratifications that governed life on the surface. Etiquette guides of the era began to include chapters on proper subway conduct, advising on everything from how to hold a newspaper in a crowded car to the impropriety of staring. The subway became a new stage for urban life, a place of anonymous observation and fleeting connection, shaping the archetypal New Yorkers, hurried, spatially aware, and adept at navigating a sea of strangers. It also became a vector for culture, carrying the slang of one neighborhood to another, spreading fashion trends from one borough to the next, and becoming a mobile gallery for the earliest forms of advertising posters, which competed for the attention of this new captive audience. The subway wasn't just a transportation network, it was the city's new shared bloodstream, circulating people and ideas with unprecedented speed. Echoes of history and tranquility. From the subway's gritty origins to Central Park's crafted beauty and the rare havens of silence, these facts highlight New York's layered identity. They remind us that beneath the hustle lies a rich tapestry of human effort and quiet retreats. Next time you walk these streets, remember, every corner holds a story waiting to be discovered. Keep exploring.